Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And it's a lovely, lovely day today, even though we're in the strangest of worlds at the moment. We've got a young man, very popular on the show. He was on last time, and many people requested that he come back on. He was going to be part of Six of the Best from Six of the Best, but we've got him now under today's strange circumstance. So we've got Steven Dickson, managing partner of Skylight Aviation. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us again.
Pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. And I understand you're in London now, and not in Kuala Lumpur or Australia or Philippines.
I got caught up. Yeah, no, I got caught up in the travel restrictions. But look, I'm better off than many are, so I can't complain. I'm sitting here on the river in central London, looking at blue sky and sunshine. So. I know many others are affected much more so than me, so I shan't complain, and that's certainly not bad for me as it is for many people that are affected out there, both in industry and the broader public.
Good man. I think, Steve, right at the very beginning, I think it's the right thing to do, just to say how impressed and how much respect goes out for all of the people that are operating on the front line. All the medical staff, the support staff around all the medical services, people who are keeping the supply chains running, all the people now who are going back in and working in the supermarkets, everybody who's doing their bit. Well done to everybody, and it's really, really, really appreciated.
I think a crisis always brings out either the best, hopefully the best in the majority of people, but certainly in a minority, we've seen some errant and uncommunity-like behaviour, very selfish acts. But as a whole, I've been very impressed. I mean, from last week when this really starting to tighten down and lockdown across the globe, I was caught mid-flow. I was mid-flight on my way to St. Lucia and got the news mid-flight. And the crew were absolutely wonderful. Everybody at British Airways was wonderful under very difficult circumstances. Trinidad and Tobago was going into lockdown that night, which was my next sector, and you could see in the airport staff that they knew that might be their last day at work for quite some time. But everybody pulled together and they got us back. And in fact, the crew did a back-to-back, which was quite amazing. I did a back-to-back as well. Luckily, I managed to rest for a few days afterwards in recovery. But I think it's across the board, Chris. I've seen it in my local Waitrose here. I've seen it in the NHS workers. I live a stone's throw from St Thomas's Hospital. The military were there this morning. I saw when I was on my one form of exercise that I'm allowed per day for a walk. The military were there this morning delivering 150,000 boxes of supplies, and it just goes to show that actually when this country is in a crisis, despite the odd absolute crap that you will find in any time, as a whole, I've been very impressed by people pulling together, and what's needed right now is community to pull together and act as one in union rather than in isolation for themselves.
Yeah, no, exactly, Steve. And I think now and all around the world, everybody is appreciating that, this is a really, really serious situation that people have got to understand, cooperate and get through for the next 3 or 4 months.
Well, I think, it was only a few weeks ago that heads of state, which, I'm normally not sort of backwards and coming forward, just as you know, but in the interest of being much more collegiate at these difficult times, I shan't apportion names, but only a few weeks ago, heads of state and heads of government were kind of playing this down and responding in a way that was I wouldn't say callous or irresponsible. They were responding with information that they had, but there were some very blatant acts of disregard for public health and public safety, and of course, only 2 weeks on, they're sort of eating their words and winding that back. And I just, I can't impress on people enough that whatever sacrifices you've had to make in your life, somebody else has had to make something much more. People have lost loved ones and family members. So whatever you're going through, and however difficult it is, maybe being cooped up or stuck at home with a wife and the kids, some of us are not in fortunate position to have that. Some of us lost family members as a result. And I had a wonderful quote on Radio 4 this morning, which was, if you still think this is normal, if nothing has changed in your day and you're acting normally, then you're doing this wrong and something has to change.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Stephen. I've been talking about what the new normal is going to be, because nothing is going to be the same as it was. And I can remember growing up, and there was a show on TV called All Our Yesterdays, and that's going to repeat itself now, because all our yesterdays are never ever going to be the same when we look forward to the new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a major reset, a major reset of normality, and nothing will be the same again. I don't know if it's cyclical or it's generation. Certainly, generations that are on the planet today. I mean, going back 100 years, you probably couldn't find anything as impactful as this. I think the last I had was the outbreak of Spanish flu, which was in the late 19th century, I think. So this is major to industry, to commerce, people's lives, the way that we act, the way that we behave. But I just hope that a set of better behaviours come from people, rather than sort of closing that door in somebody's face as you walk through the supermarket. Maybe hold it open for them to help people. Maybe community spirit. I dropped off some meals this morning to some children of friends of mine who are home alone, and sort of that community spirit that exists around actually helping your neighbours. Maybe it means picking up some groceries or taking a friend's dog for a walk. But actually, those behaviours are much more indicative of a more seismic like shift in community spirit, and I hope that's for the better, and that remains, if nothing else.
I totally agree, Stephen. And the solidarity between people, between regions, between towns, communities, etc., that also has to expand even further, so that it's with political groups and countries. People have got to now start doing things in the right way, as opposed to opposing everybody and all this demonizing. And something I don't know, I'm no expert on much really, but what I do know is when you look at the amount of money that's spent on arms and military issues and stuff, there's no military issue has had this effect on the entire world.
No, absolutely right.
And
it's it's a chance for people to sort of hunker down, and whilst you've got the opportunity to take a reset, which we've never had before. No matter you think your 2-week holiday in the summer is a chance to reset. That's absolute bollocks. A reset is a major shift in the way that we act and we behave. So if it means working better together in unison and harmony for the greater good, then that I think is a good thing. Specifically within our industry, I mean, you still see pockets of decisions being taken in isolation, and without thought for the greater community. I think what we need to see is a more collaborative, centrally led approach to a lot of this stuff. I'm all one for devolution, to the right groups and to the right communities and within the right sort of jurisdictions. But there has to be kind of some central lead, because a lot of people don't make change willingly. Change is done because it's absolutely necessary. Well, change is being done now because of survival. That shouldn't really be necessary in whatever the new norm is. So once we're through this, I'd like to think that there is a much more centrally led, collaborative approach across all stakeholders and community groups, whether it's in industry or outside.
I totally agree, Steve. Now, you like myself, we've travelled a lot over the last decade or so, and always in and out of different countries. One of the things that I reflect on now is, some of the countries when you enter them, they were always taking temperatures and looking at things and a little bit more prepared. And I think now companies, and especially C-suite level, they're going to be spending a lot more time focused on risk issues, continuity, emergency response than they ever did before. And whilst it doesn't bring in revenues, it certainly allows for a more successful approach to business when things do go wrong. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I'd stay away from the specifics on the virus and the checks that countries are doing, because I'm no expert in that. There are far better experts than you or I. Absolutely, because I think the whole piece around temperature checks is an indicative example, but of course there are lots of false positives that come from that create its own mess in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
So I won't comment on that specifically. But what I think is important, Chris, is from a general, good practice business continuity planning. is this has shown both internally to airlines, airports, business, commerce as a whole, but also externally to supply chain, to customers, to governments and other stakeholders. That nobody, however prepared a business is or a sector is, an airport or a government or a regulator or a haulage company or a cargo terminal operator, however prepared they are, nothing has ever been sufficient. Now this is the kind of, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is probably at the up in the 8, 7 or 8, high impact, high fallout and associated collateral with the coronavirus today. But even if we were kind of midway on that scale, I just wonder how many businesses would be prepared. So I think what this has done is probably sent a shockwave through most of the business and through the populace of this globe this very fragile globe that we live on. That we've got to get better prepared. We've got to start thinking about longer term contingency planning. How do we restart business when the time is right? How do we create the checks and balances? How do we wrap around the governance with it? How do we get our own internal sense of, is this now safe to operate? What it's all very well government, clicking the button and saying, right, we're open for business again. But actually, how does that work internally with corporates and small medium-sized enterprises? What are those checks and balances? So I think there's going to be a lot of support required out there going forward, to business and the broader base of the populace to lend that support.
I totally agree, and now we're coming into what you do and what you do very well, Steve. So you support organisations, and I think one of the things that people are going to have to be aware of, and especially those that have got operations across the globe, is when the button does get reset and people are saying, right now we're ready to operate. Lots of carriers, they're going to have to be sure that when they do operate, that the parties that were serving them before this particular period are going to be able to do so, and on what level, as everybody else is going to want to get back on. So there's going to be a big pressure point now on organisations to make sure they've got the right people and in the right frame of mind, because people are also going to take a little bit of re-energising and reconvincing and being led. So that's going to be a huge problem.
Well, when you look at the kind of, I was talking to somebody yesterday in a supplier to airline, and they said, look, when this re-kicks off, we're potentially talking about upwards of 200 locations that will have to restart their business. Now, how is an organisation? They're a large, fairly well supported, managed organisation, but how does a business of that ilk go about ensuring they've got the right people in place, the right resources, the right certification, training? Who's been speaking to the regulators, having the conversation about extending training? Where have the staff gone? If you look at airport work, somebody in there, let's take the UK for example, earning £9, £10, £12 an hour. That's kind of the scale of the worker that we're talking about in the in the airport environment. Well, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Boots, the pharmacy are paying the same today. They're going to be competing for labour in a pool of people that have probably left that business, very experienced people leaving the business, gone to work elsewhere in the sectors that demand resource during this difficult time of this crisis. How do you get the people back into the business? What to say they'll come back to the business? How do they satisfy their airline customers that they are compliant? Who is managing from a macro level the access to airports again? Is it going to be done by the slot coordinators independently, or is the government going to expect it to push the button and airlines all start up again? So, internally, within Skylight, we are having our own conversations across the team about what we may be able to support business in that regard. But certainly across business, I think there's going to be a lot of deep thought put into that to ensure that our business, which is, aviation is generally very well regarded when it comes to compliance and safety standards. I mean, it's one of the industries that do it pretty well. So, there's a lot of good people, good practice, process, and precedent set within the industry already. But when you suck out a lot of that resource, I mean, I've been speaking to airlines over the last few days in Asia Pacific, in North America, in Europe. Senior C-level leaders that are telling me, this is going to be a large drain on resource, because when you're offering experienced people the chance of voluntary redundancies, normally it's the good people that you tend to find exiting the business. The old bad eggs that have been hanging around for years, an excuse to get a paycheck every month, tend to hang around, and they tend not to be the ones that put their hand up for voluntary redundancy. So you lose a lot of that talent and expertise. These are big airlines that are genuinely nervous about, the restart and what that means to them and their talent pool and their ability to because I suspect when demand picks up, I don't suspect it's going to be incremental. There's lots of people stuck in many places. There's lots of people that need to get to places. We're going to be cooped up for months. I suspect this is not a three-week lockdown as Boris announced last night. I suspect it's probably longer, and maybe rightfully so. But again, it's not for me to comment. That's for the chief scientific and chief medical officer to handle, not a layman like you or I.
Yeah.
But I think what is important is that we have the right sense of scale. When this kicks off, it's not going to be one or two flights ramping up slowly. It's going to be pretty full on pedal to the metal, or as they say in Australia, flat chat. When it restarts. So that I think is something that all of us should think about carefully and take the time now when you're sitting at home with a mug of tea or a glass of wine in your four walls in the evening to give that some thought. And maybe there is a community model or approach for sharing some of that thought. I don't know, but lots of potential there, I think, certainly, for sure.
No, I agree. And I was talking with Glyn Hughes this morning from IATA, and he was coming out with some of the statistics. 1.1 million flights cancelled, some 113 billion impact on revenues, and he was basically saying the same. People are now looking at the cargo side of the business, keeping the supply chains open and making sure that medical and real necessities are still flowing. There's a side to our business that people don't normally appreciate or are aware of.
Yeah, I mean, every industry, every shop shelf, every restaurant, every kind of grocery store that you enter, most probably, a 50% of what is on those shelves has been moved by air cargo. And people don't realize the impact of that on their daily lives. So, whilst passenger flights have been suspended, that's why governments and airports have been so desperate to maintain, cargo connectivity for the world. Because if we lost air cargo, let me tell you, you think 3 weeks in isolation would be tough as it is today. It would be a bloody sin if that were to happen. So I think we've got to be very careful about managing those links and managing that very fragile cargo business, because air cargo is critical now to most nations that are dependent on these imports. So no, and that's why you've seen other airlines. I mean, Qantas in Australia have not converted, but they're using their 737, the 737 passenger aircraft for cargo operations now, because the demand is now so high. Because of course they've lost a lot of the wide body traffic, they would have normally had using commercial passenger flights. So airlines are already being innovative and creative where they can, but it needs a concerted effort. And you're right. It's this is. I mean, I was looking at the Eurocontrol stats yesterday, and the drop in passenger demand. I mean, it's just phenomenal. They published the airline response to since the COVID-19 crisis kind of started, and the extent of airline capacity reduction is stark. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I never thought I'd seen anything like it. It's tough to look at, but we're all going to be resilient. One thing, our business is resilient in aviation. Is it's pretty good at bouncing back because we've had so many crises thrown at us, and the aviation business is already very fragile. But I've been having calls this morning from, as well as the odd friend that picks up the phone and thinks you can work a miracle to get them back when Emirates cease all flights, through Dubai, which the travelling public never fails to amaze you sometimes about their understanding of the situation. I've had calls with an airline in the UK and an airline in Southeast Asia, connecting them because British government had asked for some support with the repatriation, and I was able to get 70 British nationals out of Southeast Asia and ASEAN nations onto a mainline airline network and then back to the UK as asked by the Foreign Office. So those kind of conversations we've been having as well to help clients. Of course, it's all stuff that you do, and our industry is used to a crisis and therefore reacts very positively. So, I think this is in a crisis when we're kind of generally at our best. But I'd rather have to be dealing with something else than dealing with helping airlines get customers out of for repatriation. But that's where we are today.
100%. Now that the point you've just brought up, and one that I was talking to Glyn about as well. If you look at how the globe relies on certain pockets within our globe, within our world, and maybe now that's going to start to change because there's too much reliance on certain areas, and that's going to have to spread around. Now, if that spreads around, obviously people are going to have to start looking at costs and the way that impacts on their normal expectations for produce on the shelves or services. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I get my kill at the sort of the Green Brigade. All the sort of the non-meat eaters out there, the carnivores. Some of them are very decent people, of course, but for the most part, they tend to be quite righteous, and they've generally kind of found a way to be very proud of the fact of having aubergines and quinoa and all sorts of pulses and barleys on their plate, rather than a nice bit of steak and chips that I'd enjoy. Now, that's all very well. What you put on your plate is your choice. I'm not criticising that. What is critical, of course, is the fact that most of that comes from South America or Asia or Australia and flies many hours through cool chain systems that are very expensive to operate, very damaging to the produce if they break down, very expensive for both the forwarder and the end customer. And my steak comes from down the road in Hereford, and my chips were grown on a farm in Yorkshire. So I'm not quite sure that I'm advocating that everybody kind of considers the dietary impact, but you're onto something there, Chris. There certainly is some mileage and reconsidering, kind of what goes from farm to shelf and therefore to kitchen and to your waistline.
And also, yeah. Oh, we won't talk about waistlines, but the business of
I think all of us will be talking about waistlines in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, no, but from farm to fork, and also what goes on the farms, I think is also going to be something that's going to be looked at, because there are different standards, and those standards are tolerated because of the price and the production cost. And I think the awareness level for everybody, which will be a lot more now from this particular crisis, it needs to be continued so that people actually make a proper choice, which is, would I pay that little bit extra for something that's been done in a certain way and is going to be safer or is going to be to a higher standard? Would I pay for it? And then,
look, I mean, maybe you and I have got that opportunity, Chris, to make that choice, and we can make that critical choice, and we make that judgment. We can pay for it. But remember, a large number of I suspect our listeners, and a large number of their families and their children, or their grandchildren, can't make those choices. Because when you're on basic incomes, or you're on low incomes, or you're on welfare, it's difficult to make those choices. So those products will exist, and those standards will still be. I wouldn't say compromised. I mean, I'm not an expert in veterinary or livestock care, but people will always continue to look for the lowest price. What I think is important is, it's interesting listening back to a conference that I think it was Carsten Spohr, the CEO of the Lufthansa Group.
Yeah.
He made a comment. I think it was last month or a couple of months ago. He made a comment basically that that €9.99 fares. Of course, he's having a dig at Michael O'Leary at Ryanair at the time, who was on stage with him that 90 or 99 fares should not exist and are damaging for the market and damaging for the industry. That wouldn't be my view, and it certainly wasn't Michael O'Leary's view. But maybe Mr. Spohr, Herr Spohr, is onto something.
Yeah, and like, I mean, thanks for jumping in. But before I was going to finish, what I was going to say is that yes, you
what
and
do you
me
mean jumping in.
You and me. Don't worry.
You've always said you enjoy my conversation.
I do. I love it, Steve. I love it. Keep jumping, son. But what I was going to say is, yes, we probably can make a choice. But I think what's come out now is that so many people, now that they're reflecting on the government stepping in and supporting people, they're actually saying that the support levels aren't living levels. So that's being adjusted. So I think we also have to have an obligation to make sure that people at whatever level should have the basic opportunity to do what's best for them and their families.
Yeah, well, I think it was Sweden that recently created a universal, or maybe it was Finland with that young, bright young lady prime minister with a universal basic income. So regardless of what your capability is to be employed or your capacity to be employed, if you've got a disability or if you're able-bodied or whatever, or if you're a stay-at-home mother who chooses to do that, or you're a father in a top job, or you're a labourer or whatever you are on the scale, the income scale or the employability scale, the government are paying you now a universal basic income that is across the board to ensure that those decisions that you and I can make can be taken by everyone. Now I'm no socialist, as you know, but look, this is to coin your phrase, the new norm. Maybe there is some more consideration and some more thinking time and some more consideration to be given to what the impact of all of this is.
Exactly, and also the values and the awareness, and I think everybody is brighter and everybody is better if they've been given that opportunity for awareness and education and learning and being led in the right way. And likewise, I'm no socialist either, and but I think now is the time to have a little bit more of a balancing act from people who can make the difference, because the things that people were arguing about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and 3 months ago, now it's all gone out the window because every single country is doing what they should do, which is to protect their people from an issue that is not their fault.
Yeah.
So I think, now, if you take that and then you see what the impact will be on the business when it starts to come back again, there will be a differential as to where are the main trade routes. So there'll be a lot of changes, I think, and there'll be a lot of focus on homegrown sustainability, and wherever possible, people should support their own backyard. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Now, now when that happens and when things start to come back, obviously cargo will come back earlier, but when the passenger market starts to come back again, if you look at the way people have adapted, and they've been forced to adapt with technology, with working from home, and now appreciating that people can work from home, and things like we've done with Zoom and various other medias and opportunities to communicate, I think there'll be more of that, and it'll be more widely accepted because it allows people to not be on the road so much in their cars, which is obviously a good thing. The commute will be reduced, so they got more time to spend with their family, which is a good thing. And if they can work from home, it also reduces the demand for office space, which reduces the costs of companies, and it lets everybody have a much better balance. Now, with that in mind, it's also going to affect people travelling. So we were talking about the LCCs a little bit earlier, and especially you're a specialist in that area. If you look at the speed of turnaround and now the costs of turnaround and the pressures that are on to reduce, and then people leaving the industry because they can get better jobs elsewhere and not working, earlier in the morning and being inside aircraft bellies, putting bags on, etc. That surely has to change as well.
I think I disagree. I mean, look, there has to be a balance to it. I mean, I think the problem is, if you're Ryanair or EasyJet or Wizz Air or Jetstar or Cebu Pacific or whomever, low cost carrier, that has premised your entire business model on effective, highly optimized utilization of your assets, and you have a huge amount of capital employed and capital invested in that business, and you rely on that utilization to drive high seat availability, and therefore able to offer lowest cost, and you've had a shutdown for 3 months, for 4 months, for 5 months, and therefore cash availability and net cash outflow has increased through that period. I think we're going to be careful that there might even be even more demand to see more of a shift into application of not the low cost carrier business model, but some of the traits of the low cost carriers might be being looked at from others in industry. I mean, I look at it the other way. I turn it on. Carson Sport is probably less of a figurehead that I would use an example in industry. I'd probably more look towards Michael O'Leary. So no surprise that my opinion therefore is that flattery being the best form of what is that saying? I can't remember the saying right now. To flatter Ryanair's business model is or envy is the best form of flattery. I think something along those lines is what I'm trying to say right now. Probably 3 days sitting in the house in the 4 walls.
I was going to say, yeah.
But I suspect there might be other airlines looking at saying, what is it that these carriers are doing that we are not today, and how can we capitalize on that when we've had this massive shutdown, this massive impact to our cash, had to call in the lenders or the credit lines of the bank to support them over the period, or potentially from government, which is a tough ask for private sector firms. I think we might see some more of that. So I wouldn't be so convinced that we'd move away from those models. I would see it the other way, and I think therefore we've got to be careful about the impact on supply chain, on our people, on our resources, on health and safety standards, and everybody else. So I see the world slightly differently.
Yeah, no, and it's good too, Stephen. And whenever we meet, we do have a difference of opinion, which is great. But where I was leading is, even the term, low cost. I think there's room for it to move slightly to balanced cost, and if people get the right balance, so it's not about the optimizing assets, and it's for me, it's more about allowing people to do what they need to do correctly without putting too much pressure on them, which could lead to mistakes. But the balance.
Well.
Pardon?
Look, I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, I heard on.
I thought you barked there. It sounded like there was a dog in the room.
No, I wish I had my dog. My dog's in Malaysia and I'm in London. The imitation is the best form of flattery. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But no, sorry. What I was going to say was there has been some monumental customer service screw up. Amongst all of this, we've seen some airlines acting very honourably from the beginning, doing the right thing by the customer, allowing refunds from day one.
Correct.
And you've seen other airlines in Europe making it very, very difficult for customers to get the money that they are entitled to under normal legislation, but even more so under extraordinary circumstances like this. But of course, when you are in cash preservation mode and you are in survival mode, you can, within industry, I can understand those behaviours, but Joe Public generally doesn't, and they won't be very forgiving. So I think now is the time to do the right thing by your customers. It is the right time to do the right thing to secure your long-term future, and it is the right time, needless to say, to do the right thing for your employees.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, so many people. It's such a worry. Now, with that worry, obviously, people will be looking forward to that golden announcement, or somebody calling them up and saying, look, we're back in operation, we need you back, etc. Do you think there's going to be enough preparation, and communication to people to let them know that they're going to be coming back to a new normal, and perhaps some of the legacy activities that were going on previously should be shed or should be put to one side, and we should focus on critical and important rather than recommended activities.
Well, again, reading from the press and talking to colleagues in industry within airlines, I think there is still a degree of reluctance to accept that we are in absolute kind of crisis mode, and this is a battle for survival, not just for airlines but for airports and the supply chain all surrounding them. That of course extends outside of our industry to the rest of business. I know this is affecting lots of people in different ways, except the supermarkets, by all intents and purposes, it would appear. But for our industry, we have to really understand. I mean, it's tough for the employees. It's tough to accept leave without pay. It's tough probably for many people to go on 80% salary.
Yep.
It's tough for a lot of people to have to use forced leave that they don't want to use. I mean, they're already in a dire situation. Not even getting out the house every day is tough for many people. But let's be honest, folks. There is no world that will exist tomorrow that's the same as yesterday. This is now a very different place. And the reason that your employers are asking you to make these massive concessions, and it has to be equitable, and it has to be across the board. This has to be done fairly. But the reason that these have to be made is actually to preserve some of the long term value in the business, and also to protect long term jobs. I think that message is not quite fully understood by all groups of society. We've seen some of the trade unions. One of the pilots union announcing last week, before it really got serious, that they were disappointed that British Airways might have to make some pilot redundancies. Well, look, we're all bloody disappointed this is going on right now. But hey, folks, this is some of the highest paid people in our industry that probably have got more collateral and capital availability to survive than probably most that work for your airline. So it's time to kind of suck it up and accept that there has to be some change, and it's not maybe welcome change, but for the greater good, and that's what we kind of come back to. So maybe we finish on the same message we started with: this has to be kind of a community-led approach that thinks about things for the greater good, rather than for the man himself.
Exactly, and like we both spent quite a bit of time out in Saudi, and some of the guys that I used to work with, and I think this is a real endorsement of what a CEO or somebody senior in an organisation can and does. Some of the guys I know, they were talking about a message that was sent out by Captain Kashi.
Oh, I shared it with you the other day. That's right. Yeah.
And but some of the guys, Steve, that I know well over there, they are so impressed with what he actually wrote and stated.
Yeah.
And when they were telling me, it was like they were reciting a poem, and his vision or his perception of the fact that travel is something that people had as a benefit and a wonder, but now they can rely on their own vision of what travel is.
It's wonderful. I mean, I know Kashi well, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me reading a couple of lines. But just one of the lines is as I'm looking at it in front of me. This is a message sent to all of his staff at the end of last week. But one of the lines says, "Since the beginning of time, we've been traveling the world, exploring its beauty, its wonders, and its delight. And in these trying times, for our own safety and the safety of others, we are staying home. Our bonds remain deep going forward. Travel through our homes, travel through the hearts of our loved ones, travel through our minds, explore new culinary delights, and fly through the imaginations of your children and their power to learn. Rekindle intimate moments and connect with ourselves. Home will always be the most beautiful place on earth. Stay home, stay safe. The world can wait to be travelled." Sorry, I actually got quite emotional.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
But look, isn't that wonderful?
It's absolutely superb. And
to some that might sound sort of romantic, but actually I think to most and everybody that I've spoken to, they've just been blown away with Kashi's compassion and his leadership, which is wonderful. I
mean, we know him quite well, and he's an impressive man in any day. But that shows where his true heart and his feelings are, and I thought it was just absolutely wonderful.
He's a top bloke. Yep. So call out to Captain Ibrahim Kashi.
yeah, fair play to him.
We need more like him.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Now, what the message that he's given there is also going to hopefully have people focusing on a different balance, and you hear people saying, "Oh yeah, you've got to have a work-life balance." I think it's going to come the other way now. It's going to be a life-work balance. And what people are going to have to appreciate is when this does start to come back in some form of the new normal, people are going to have to ramp up very, very quickly. But there's every likelihood, and like you've said many times now, we're not medical experts and it's up to the people who know best. Personally, I think there will be a little bit of a rebound, and there'll be it'll bounce forward and then it'll come back a little bit. Then it'll bounce further forward and it'll come back a little bit until the vaccines are found and until everybody, is able to accept this challenging virus for just being another virus. So people are going to have to get used to the fact that once they come back, it might not be a permanent comeback. It might have to then be ramped down again or wound down again. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think, look, for those of us that are used to being, having challenges thrown at us, I mean, one of our client airlines in Skylight Aviation is in the Philippines, and if it's not a tornado, it's a typhoon. If it's not a typhoon, it's an earthquake. If it's not an earthquake, it's it's martial law in one of the states. If it's not that, it's COVID-19. So now nothing has hit as hard as this has, of course, but look, there are a lot of carriers that are well versed, Chris, in being able to kind of flex up and flex down. I mean, even in Europe, you see that massive, peak that European carriers have in the summer months and then troughs in the winter months. I think we're going to have to get much better at responding and reacting and being more agile and nimble and listening to government advice properly or listening to the medical sciences properly and hindsight is a wonderful thing, but
yeah,
I just wonder if people had acted differently and more quickly and more nimbly rather than thinking about the bottom line in this period. I wonder if the health crisis would be as bad as it is now. It's affected all of us. It's affected our business for sure, and airlines and airports much more. But we're going to have to accept that there is a requirement to kind of flex up and flex down, and if businesses like mine can support industry in any way, shape, or form in doing that, then of course we're happy to do so. But I think the key message is that we've got to create that capability and the talent and the competence within the organisations across the board. And it starts with BCP. It starts actually probably with actually what does a good restart look like? Then what do we need to do for BCP? And then what do we need to go forward? Because if this hits again in 4 months' time, how will we respond? It's like those, courses that we do every couple of years for crisis management or emergency response training or ERP, and none of us expect to have them put into action. But wow, my very last dollar, if I had to bet it on putting it into action again, I'd sure be doing that, and I'd be a rich man at the end of it.
Yeah, no, I agree, Steve. Right, my friend, we're nearly at the end. As always, it's a great pleasure to talk to you, and you're always full of energy and positive, and that's what we have to be. We have to help people, support people, appreciate what people have done, and especially those that are in the health and the front line in all ways. Even people driving the buses, the tube trains, everybody that's keeping things going that have to keep going, and for everybody else, try and do what's advised as the best practice and appreciate that you're helping others by doing it.
Indeed, I mean, you shout out to everybody there, Chris. I think that's all very wanted. I mean, politicians don't normally get any thanks in the best of times. They certainly come in for a lot of criticism in the worst of times. But if you look at the way also, that our politicians, whilst there may be some criticism from some parts, whether it's the political top team in terms of the Prime Minister and his Chancellor, who I think has been utterly brilliant with Rishi Sunak. But you look at also the Health Secretary, and all the senior cabinet ministers. Not one of them has had much sleep over the last few days, I'm sure. It's time for people to be kind and go easy on them. Remember that the Prime Minister's also got a pregnant fiancée. He's got kids and family as well affected by this, as did other cabinet ministers, the chief medical officer, and all those professionals within government, in whichever rank you are. Go easy on them. They've not had an easy time, and I'm sure not one of them would want this. So when you're thinking about throwing out the insults or get on your Twitter feeds and criticizing, just take a thought first for them and their families and what they've been going through.
That's fair play, and I endorse everything that you've said there, Stephen, and the Chancellor and everybody else. And you can, I mean, even if you're watching the television, you see them first thing in the morning, you see them last thing at night. They've been at meetings, and fair play to them all. And
they don't go to bed at 11 o'clock at night. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, but and they're doing a
Yeah.
good job, and they're doing the job. They're doing the job that that they should be doing now, which is leading the people for the people and making sure that it's always in the best interest of the people. So well done.
Yeah,
very good. And
great.
Yourself, my friend, I'm sure that you'll be up there one day as a leading politician somewhere. I'd put I'd put a few pound on that.
Not sure that's a welcome choice now in my career. I think a job at Waitrose probably is far more of benefit to the country right now than me entering politics.
No, but one day. Well, please God, things will
Take
change.
care.
And thank you very much for your time as always, Steve. Look after yourself.
Thank you. Thanks
Cheers.
a lot.
Bye.